Two households, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona, where we lay our scene. If I could sing that in Italian, I would. But I cannot. So you get the words tonight. As Neil said, I'm Sidonie Garrett. I'm the Executive Artistic Director of the Heart of America Shakespeare Festival. Can everyone in the room hear me okay? Yes. Great. I'm trained in the theater. I've directed a lot of plays over too many years to talk about. Oh, look, it's presentation directions. I went the wrong way. No one taught me how to use this thing. So this just tells you a little bit about me. I have directed more than 15 Shakespeare plays, actually. I've directed a lot of modern plays. I actually directed 2 operas once in my life, and I've forgotten it until I started talking about opera again. But I directed The Marriage of Figaro, and I also have directed Falstaff, for which my Shakespeare background came in pretty handy. The shocking part of directing opera is that when you're the staging director, you're maybe not the most important person in the room. And so when we began our first rehearsal, I'm used to, as the director, just, it's like, let's begin. Okay, let's start, we're going to get on our feet and get this going. And I was like, okay, singers, you're going to be there, you're going to be there. Okay. And then the conductor went, would you like to start? Yeah. And I said, oh, yeah, you have to do that part, don't you? Come on in. They're going to be singing. I forgot they would be singing, and they would need the conductor. So I learned a good lesson that day and got very humbled very quickly. Here's the story. Does Romeo and Juliet need an introduction? Of all of Shakespeare's plays, it has been the most continuously popular since its first performance in the mid-1590s. None of us were there. Who knows what it was like? It would seem, because it's maybe the most direct of Shakespeare's plays in its emotional impact. What could be easier to understand? What could be more moving than the story of 2 adolescents finding in their sudden love for each other a reason to defy their family's mutual hatred by marrying secretly? That's all it is, right at the end of the day. The tragic outcome of their blameless love, which Shakespeare refers to as their misadventured, piteous overthrows, seems equally easy to understand. It results first from Tybalt's hot-headed refusal to obey the prince's command. Second, from accidents of timing beyond any human ability to foresee or control, much like you'd see on any show on network television. It's very simple in its storyline. It's clear in its affirmation of the power of love over hate, which is one of the greatest reasons for that story to exist. Romeo and Juliet seems to provide both a timeless theme and universal appeal. Its immediacy is what I really love about it. The time of the actual storytelling is very brief. It all happens quickly, and that happens, if any of us can remember back when we were 13 and 16 years old, time was different then. Our decision-making capabilities were different then. We were prone to go with our guts, and that we didn't even know what our guts were at the moment because we hadn't experienced them before. So the whole story hinges upon that youth, that exuberance, and what immediacy that gives us. I'm going to give you, I do think it's interesting that Shakespeare always took his text from somewhere. So in this case, it was this wonderful, The Tragical History of Romeo and Juliet, a long narrative poem. I used to memorize long poems when I was a child, and I'd perform them. I'm sure people were really happy about that. But I was part of my show, and so I kept thinking, I should have learned that one from 1562. That would have been a real crowd pleaser. Let's go forward, not backward. This is from our most recent production of Romeo and Juliet. This was a couple of years ago in the park. When we look at the text and we start to work, for me, this play is about desire, and it's on many levels. If you look at the history of private life in Western European culture, which is where this came from, it offers a complicating perspective on the timelessness of Romeo and Juliet. At the core of the play's accessibility is the importance and the privilege of modern Western culture, what it grants to the concept of desire. It's regarded as a deep expression of individual identity and central to the personal fulfillment of women, no less than men. But Such conceptions of desire reflect cultural changes in human consciousness in ways of imagining and articulating the nature of desire. In England, until the late 16th century, individual identity had been imagined not so much as the result of autonomous personal growth and consciousness, but rather as a function of social station, an individual's place in a network of social and kinship structures. You're looking at cultures that had kings, queens, earls, dukes, on down the row, all the way down to servants. So everybody had a place, right? In Shakespeare's England, in Queen Elizabeth's England, everyone had a place. And it was very difficult to move in or out of your place. So this story is about people with money. This is about, we're interested in the people with money, aren't we? They get to have prettier things. Their love is so much more important than us regular folks. Also, traditional culture distinguished sharply between the nature of identity for men and women at the time. A woman's identity was conceived almost exclusively in relationship to male authority, marital status. She was less an autonomous, desiring self than any male was. She was a daughter, a wife, a widow, all of whom were expected to be chaste, silent, and above all, obedient. It's a profound and necessary act of historical imagination to recognize innovation in the moment when Juliet impatiently invokes the coming of night, and the husband she has disobediently and secretly married when she says, "Come, gentle night, come, loving black-browed night, give me my Romeo." This is a young woman who is 13 years old, who has secretly married a guy, totally against her family's wishes, the worst possible person for her to have loved and married. And she is expressing the desire of something she doesn't even know what it is yet. That's pretty amazing. Thank you, Shakespeare, for putting those words in her mouth. Also, the nature of desire and identity is subject to historical change. It's not the same as it used to be. Cultural innovation has changed. So when we look at Romeo and Juliet now, it's different. It's not just an uncomplicated, if lyrically beautiful contest between young love and ancient grudge. The play maybe becomes a narrative that expresses a historical conflict between older forms of identity and new modes of desire, between authority and freedom, between parental will and romantic individualism. So the chorus, although the chorus also initially sets the lovers as a pair against the background of familial hatred, the reader or the watcher, attentive to societal detail, will be struck by Shakespeare's care in distinguishing between the circumstances of male and female lovers. She as much in love, her means much less to meet her new beloved anywhere, he says about Juliet. Juliet was housebound, basically. When Juliet goes anywhere in this play, she goes to church. That's pretty much it. And she always has her nurse with her because that's all she can do. She's at home or she's at church with her nurse. Romeo, on the other hand, and his fellows, they're out. They're in the street. They're with other women. They're drinking. They're fighting. They're doing whatever they want to do. And nobody seems to care, and they're all 16 years old or younger, maybe a little older. So it was a very different world back then in terms of, Juliet was practically cloistered. She might as well have been a nun at that point. She was also 13, so come on. But the story of Juliet and her Romeo, it's interesting how he phrases that as well. Maybe a single narrative, but its clear internal division is drawn along the traditionally unequal lines of gender at this point. Because of such traditional notions of identity and gender, Elizabethan theatergoers might have recognized a paradox in the play's lyrical celebration of the beauty of awakened sexual desire in an adolescent boy and girl. But causing us to identify with Romeo and Juliet's desire for one another, the play affirms their love, even while presenting it as a problem in social management. It's really what this is. This is true. It's not because Romeo and Juliet fall in love with forbidden or otherwise unavailable sexual partners, such as the usual state of affairs at the beginning of a Shakespearean comedy. And I've directed a lot of those. So we're not appropriate for each other. And then, hey, at the end we get together, right? Think Rosalind and what's his name? Think Much Ado About Nothing. Right? They're fighting. We've seen that trope over and over again ever since Shakespeare's time, right? But in this case, those comedies end happily, but Romeo and Juliet's love is a social problem. It's unresolvable except by their deaths. because they dared to marry in secret in an age when legal, consummated marriage was irreversible. Couldn't get a divorce back then. Secret marriage is the narrative device by which Shakespeare brings into conflict the new privilege claimed by individual desire and the traditional authority granted fathers to arrange their daughters' marriages. Secret marriage is the testing ground of the new kind of importance being claimed by individual desire. So Shakespeare's representation of the narrative outcome of this desire is tragic here, as you also see a secret marriage at the beginning of Othello. They get married secretly, and that also doesn't end well. And if I'm killing that for anybody, so sorry. Both of these things may suggest something of Elizabethan society's anxiety about the social cost of romantic ideal individualism. Unlike Romeo, whose deepest emotional ties are to his gang of friends, and this young woman named Rosalind that he's very upset about the first minute we meet him in the play. He's so sad, he just can't get over Rosalind. And it's surprising how quickly Juliet moves into the fore and he never thinks about Rosalind again. Poor Rosalind. But he's very tied to his buddies. And unlike the more mobile daughters of the Shakespearean comedies, who often come in pairs, Juliet lives isolated, confined, emotionally as well as physically, by her status as daughter. Her own passage into her sexual maturity comes first by way of parental invitation to think of marriage now. That's what she's told. Just think of marriage now. We're ready. Her father invites Paris, the man who wishes to marry her, to attend a banquet and feast his eyes on female beauty. These lines say, "Here all see, and like her most, whose merit most shall be," by which he means pretty much beauty. Juliet, in contrast to this, is invited to look only where her parents tell her. She says, "I'll look to like, if looking liking move, but no more deep will I endart mine eye than your consent gives strength to make it fly." Isn't that sweet? But all that said, for a 13-year-old girl, she's got quite a journey to make in a very short period of time. This is Juliet's play. It's her story. Juliet and her Romeo. He says that for a reason. She has the most to lose. She has no options other than, what's she gonna do? Gonna go get her MBA? Nope. Her father says, "If you don't do what I say, you're out of my house." He threatens to strike her multiple times, with all the other women throwing themselves at him to stop him from beating her senseless. "If you don't marry the guy I want you to marry, you're dead to me. You're out of my house," which means prostitute, nun, dead. That's pretty much it. Those are your options. So yeah, prostitute, nun, or die. 5 days from falling in love to death. That's pretty much the actual running time of this play. Every time we look at a story, we say, how long does this go? How many days? How many weeks? Is it over a period of, time? Some plays feel like a runaway train. When you get on them, you kind of can't get off them. And it depends on when the train starts too. Sometimes they start later in the play and then you're suddenly on the train, you can't get off. Macbeth is the one play that feels like a runaway train from the minute we start it, every time I direct it. This play always feels like a runaway train from the moment that Mercutio is stabbed. From then on, I'm just like, we're done. Everything changes. It's like the sun dims and life goes on. So you can't even continue it. Is this the right? I don't usually work with slides. I'm sorry, I'm not very good at this part. Let's see where we are. Oh, we're not quite there yet. So I just want to say, did any of you see the film Shakespeare in Love? Yeah? So one of the best moments for me, and I've held on to it forever, it sticks with me, is when the audience was watching the first ever performance of the play Romeo and Juliet. And Juliet's on the bier, supposed dead, and hi, come on in. Juliet wakes up in the tomb and sits up with a huge breath. And the entire audience with one voice goes, "Ah!" Right? Because they had no idea what was going to happen. And it's so interesting for me as a director, especially doing a play like this that I've now directed twice and have been in and have done bits and pieces of in various ways. You know people know the play, and yet having not done that play in the park for, how many years was it? 15 years? There are kids who were born and maybe had never been out there yet. And they may have been seeing the play for the first time. Gave me heart, because I thought, if you don't know what's going to happen, think about how that emotional thing kicks in for you, right? If you haven't seen it. My job as a director and with that group of people that I'm telling that story with is to make you feel that as much as we can. What if we got you to kind of forget for a minute? Or we just surprise you by the way it all happens, or you haven't seen it for a long time and you're going, I know it's going to happen. Oh gosh, it just happened, right? Because once you get in that tomb, it's weird in there. But I just love that fresh and visceral feeling, because that's what we want in storytelling, isn't it? Every time. I want to be surprised. I want to be jolted into laughter or tears. I mean, how hard is that to get someone to just burst into tears, right? Really hard, but you want that every time when you're telling a story. And this is a good one to tell. But you still want people to feel something, even though they know it's going to happen. I still want them to live. I want them to live, right? Even if you know how it's going to turn out. The play is half rom-com and half tragedy. And that's the God's truth. So this summer we were doing the play, I had somebody talk to me at intermission like, this was really funny. At the beginning, up to intermission, it was like, this was so fun. I had no idea it was this funny. I go, yeah, well, it just is. It kind of is, because it's kids trying to be in love, and that whole balcony scene is beautiful, and it's also ridiculous. They don't know what they're doing. They're terrified the whole time. The other one's going to go, nah, I don't like you. Go away, right? Because it keeps coming. They just keep going. It's like, do you still like me? What do you want me to do? I mean, they don't know what to do. And we were all there at one point. So if we were there at one point and we're way beyond it, or if we're living it in the moment, we still recognize it for what it is, right? It's the awkwardness of youth, and it's the desire to be in love and hope. Friar Lawrence is hopeful. The nurse is hopeful. The kids are hopeful, right? It's half a rom-com. And then, boom, threats, swords, death, then it becomes horrible. So if Tybalt doesn't kill Mercutio and Romeo doesn't kill Tybalt, the kids could have made it. That's it. The marriage might have actually changed the dynamic between the two families and solved the feud, and the play would have ended in a huge, bigger wedding. We don't have to. We don't need the secret wedding anymore. We'll make a real wedding. The Pope will come. Life is good, right? Could have happened. So when we're actually producing this outside, the elements are everything, and I mean that in every possible way. When I'm producing and directing a play, first thing I do after reading it and deciding to create it is to hire designers to help create the world that we're going to inhabit. So for your hometown Shakespeare Festival, the elements for us include outdoor elements. So when we're planning, we have to talk about conceptually, where are we going to set this play? What time period? When especially a play we're using weapons, it's not very much fun. There's this great movie version of Romeo and Juliet where they use guns. And it's updated, but I mean, it's very, kids love it. They get into it. They understand it. There's a violence to it. There's all that. Doing that on stage is weird and practically impossible. You'd have to be a horrible shot to have the kind of gun battle we want you to have, right? Nobody'd hit anybody for a long time because you don't want it to be over in 3 seconds. That's not the point. I think the true point of bringing home what real danger and violence is, it takes a minute, especially when you have to get in close with people, when you have to stress, and when I watch the fighters do their work, it's exhausting. It's exhausting to hack at each other with any kind of a hand weapon, a sword, an axe, whatever. It's really exhausting. So, they had to be in it all the way, and these guys are, again, 16, 17 years old. This is like games to them. They did you think you were going to die when you were 17? I didn't. Or I would never have been driving as bad as I was. I mean, you felt invincible, right? I think, a lot of times people that are really young and do things that are dangerous, like fight with each other with weapons, I don't think they really think they're going to kill somebody all the time. I don't think they get it. We get it, but they don't. So you just don't want to have a faggy gun battle. You don't want to do that. So we have to think about all of these things when we're deciding who, what, when, where, why. We have to know, what is the What locations do we have to have? What does it need to look like? And what's going to be engaging for you? I will tell you that in Southmoreland Park, where we perform, it's the size of a football field. I'll probably say that 6 more times, but it's true. In here, you can see me back there. You can pretty much see what I'm doing, my facial expressions. Well, out there, if you're sitting on the back wall of a football field size thing, I'm going to be this big. So, it's really important that we choose something, and preferably that doesn't look like what you and I are wearing right now. I don't want to go watch people dress like me a lot of times. I just, it's not very dramatic. Not as dramatic as I'd like it to be. I'd rather have a robe. I'd rather have a crown. I'd rather have, and sometimes we need bigger clothes to read all the way to the back wall. So that always is a big factor in what we decide to do. Let me slip ahead. Oh, look, pictures. These are things we talked about. So we talk about our Verona, our version of Verona, our version of Italy. Where are all the places that the story takes us? It's always about, we're outside too. What building materials can we use, right? What's gonna sustain in the weather, and what's gonna look right? What state do we find the village in, the town in? The one time we did Romeo and Juliet where parts of all the buildings looked like they'd been bombed. And that's a valid choice because this feud's been going on for a while. So we don't know they're not lobbing, missiles or whatever, cannonballs at each other, right? That's certainly a valid choice. My choice was it's much more opulent, and that they're better poisoners and stabbers than they are missile lobbers. So, but that we have to show there's wealth. And that you also have to go to different locations and create spaces that say, this can be enough of what you need to see to know where we are. That's also important. What do we absolutely have to help you know where we are at any given moment? And then for this play, it's also got to include a tomb, which we'll talk about in a moment, because that ain't easy. That ain't easy. Who populates our world? And again, back to the social structure. There's a prince. He has kinsmen in this story, and I'm not sure, I don't know the opera as well as I should, but in the play, the prince's kinsmen are Mercutio and Paris, who are both killed. So when he keeps saying, stop fighting, stop fighting, stop fighting, and he's like, my people, I took a hit because of your stupid fighting. So stop doing it, because those were his people, So not only am I your prince, but now my family's blood has been spilled, and these boys are dead because of you. So it's a huge, huge thing. The fathers Capulet and Montague are keeping the peace and trying to, until they're not. I think it's really important that we see everyone involved. So the first scene of the play, the last time we did it, every single person except for Romeo and Juliet was there, and they were all fighting. They all started, the women, even the mothers, Capulet and Montague, went at each other's hair, started slapping and pulling hair. At first they tried to stop the men, and then it was a free-for-all. Because I think it tells the story really clearly, this is the environment we're living in. So not going to be easy to get out of that without some dead people. I want to say also that the conflict between traditional authority and individual desire provides a framework for what Shakespeare presents as the Capulet-Montague feud. Every time we do this play, somebody goes, well, what are they fighting about? It's like, we don't know. We're going to have to make that up. We have to come up with something, and you decide. We let the actors decide, and we talk about it. It's like, it's better if you know something. Could be something really dumb, doesn't matter. In my own family, I'll just tell you a story of the Depression. Uncle Mason came over to the house while my granddad was gone and took some cream. They never spoke again. I mean, so I'm just saying, it doesn't have to be that big a deal to make people hate each other. You never know where it starts. You never know how small it is before it just becomes the thing. And then we always hate them. We don't even know why, but we hate them, and that's it. So could be that. That feud in this play, like the lover's secret marriage, is another problem in social management. That's what it is. It's a socially problematic desire of some kind. We don't know what they're fighting about. The feud is causeless. It is goalless. It just is. and it is the framework that makes every single thing in the play happen. That's the weird thing. But we don't have to know what it is. We just have to know how bad it is. And that's the job of telling that story to the audience. You have to understand how they value it, right? How they give it importance and how meaningful it is to them, whatever it is. The chorus says, both alike in dignity. The very first moment we hear the first words of the play. Later, after he breaks up the big street brawl, he says they are in penalty alike. So we know they are not really fighting over a difference. They're just the same. They're equal in money. They're equal in power. They're equal in all these ways. Their kids should have been a good match, right? You're like, well, this would have been good. What's the problem, right? I mean, these two families, you don't those richy people like to marry those richy people? Yes, they should have just done it. It also, the lover's desire is a thing that is also desire in another form when you think about what brings those young men to the streets as fighters. This feud creates a rivalry that even the prince's power cannot sever. It's interesting how, again, that because they're young, they're like, I don't care. Don't let him see us. Don't let him see us. Let's go to the alley. Let's catch him in the alley. Let's kill him in the alley, right? Feuding really reinforces male identity in this world. Loyalty to your ancestry, to your clan, loyalty to your brothers in arms. I mean, these are brothers in arms out in the street. So it really does clarify a social structure as well. We also get to meet the servants at the very beginning, which I've always loved. Do you bite your thumb at me, sir? Yes, I bite my thumb at you, sir. I mean, it's the whole, even the servants of both households don't go out in the street unless they know they might get involved in a big old fight, right? And they're willing to fight for their master's household because they identify with that household. If you look at this too, I just want to say, is the picture of the Capulet Ball. You can't see it big enough, but I think we've got another better picture. In this world too, we also have to look at what is the most important thing when it comes to wealth. The Capulet Ball is important in this play, and it's going to be very important in the opera. These are things that show wealth, power, who these people are, and they also give you a place where romance can happen. A masked ball, what's better than that, right? For secret romance. I mean, you see it time and again. Things are expensive. We have to look expensive. We have to look pretty. A dark tomb is the last place we go. And all the people in this play go to that tomb. It's crazy making for a director. Everybody's in that tomb at some point, and they just keep coming. So I decided to also stage Juliet's, burial when she's not really dead. She's just asleep, right? So they're like, now you're getting them down in that stupid tomb twice. So we do the whole thing where they bring Juliet in. She's left there on the bier. The parents come through. Then we do the whole walking through, the sobbing, the keening. Everyone leaves. Silence. Okay, it's good. But then later, we go back to Romeo for a little bit. He's banished, and we go over there, and then he has to go to the tomb. And then, Paris has to be at the tomb, then Romeo has to be at the tomb, then Friar Lawrence has to come to the tomb, then eventually the alarm is raised, and then the prince comes to the tomb, and then the families come to the tomb, and by the end of the thing, everybody's in the tomb, and it's always like, don't stand there, go over there. Okay, you be there. It's not an easy stuff and getting people down into a tomb, right? Just telling you, it's not easy. It's a hard job. This is in the park, just so you know, we're also, no, I got this. Is during the light in the park, if you're watching the opera, it's all going to be lit from the get-go. They can do whatever they want. You're indoors. Lighting will be your best friend. Outdoors, nature is our best friend. So for the first hour, we're in some kind of daylight. We start at pretty much full daylight, and we have an hour to go to darkness. It's a very different thing. Interestingly, in this play, if you ever read it, and most teachers, I love them, but sometimes they just focus so much on the light and dark elements. The use of the words light and dark in this play are pretty powerful, and they show up again and again and again. But in our case, it's literal light and dark. So we have to shape as much as we can with light before it gets dark. If you're out there watching in Southmoreland Park, it's over there by the Nelson, you're watching, you're eating your sandwich, and then there's a nice person that decides to walk their dog behind the set over there on the wall, and you're going to look at them, because I look at them. Everybody does. We look at them, and then we look at that, oh, look, there's a hawk. Oh, sometimes there's a bunny. So our job is to try to do every single thing we can to get people focused and keep them focused on the set, even when it's not dark. It gets much easier in part 2. But part 1, we have our work cut out for us. Here you can see, I think I just wanted to show this photo because it does show the beginning of, I wanted to show from the very beginning. It's hard sometimes to remember who everyone is. And so especially out there, I made a tableau happen just so you could see this side of the stage are these people, this side of the stage are these people, and in the middle is the friar, who is there for everyone, but unfortunately it doesn't work out so well for the poor friar. But the prince is also there for everyone in his own way, I think. I think he's trying to do the right thing. Hopefully that helped people understand kind of the world we were living in. We try to color code costumes as much as we can. You can see there's blue on one side and yellow and red on the other. You can see the prince's 2 guys, they're a little bit fancier. They've got a lot of gold and black on. That's Mercutio and Paris, right there by the friar. And then the nurse looking like the nurse, like a nurse does. So we tried to do our best to show off everything we could and get very specific about who's who and what's what. Here's some more photos just to give you more of an idea. There's some fighting going on at the very beginning. With those ridiculous wigs, but those wigs really read out in the park, right? Those poor guys, they'd go, these look dumb, don't they? I go, not out there, they don't. I have to tell actors all the time, trust me, from out there, they don't look dumb. You're all right. Lots of color. You can see this down here is the Capulet Ball up here on the balcony. Lots and lots of color, shininess, lots of masks, as much color, and we did as much as we could to make something beautiful and cheerful and delightful happen. You also have to make really specific choices when you're out there in the acting styles, and everything has to be big. So if we were all in a scene together, right? I'm standing up here, and I have the next line, and I just said my next line and I didn't do anything, there are going to be a lot of people that have no idea who's talking. I'm always like, if you're in a group of 5 people, you're in a group of 3 people, you better move something. Move an arm, make a gesture, step forward, do something, because it's very different than, being even in an indoor space. The space where the lyric performs is big, but it's not as big as where we're performing. And there's not other things to distract you. I directed the Unicorn Theater a lot. What a difference. 150 seats. You can see me breathe and spit, right? Out there, it is, much different in terms of just kind of the acting work you have to do. There's a picture next, I think. Here's a great picture of Juliet plucking a rose from her balcony. These are all taken of the balcony scenes. So you can see Romeo fleeing his friends. They're looking for him. He's hiding behind a tree. He's going to do a lot of direct address to the audience right before Juliet comes out. So this begins with, Romeo, and him going, they jested scars that never felt a wound, right? And then there she is, but soft, right? That all happens. I gave her a rose up there that she could pluck because she talks about the rose, right? So we all know the line about the rose. Well, it's right there. The rose also gives you a touch point out there. So sometimes we're making choices. I wouldn't not make that choice inside, but I'm definitely going to make that choice outside because he can't reach her. She's got a gate. We have locked gates around her going up the stairs. He can't really get through. It would be hard for him to climb up there. We have to give a sense that she's unreachable, right? Because they're too much in love, and Lord knows what those crazy kids would do. But if she has this rose and she's actually referencing it, she can, in our case, she drops it because he startles her. Suddenly she's talking. She thinks she's talking to herself. He's listening. He's looking at you like, this is happening, right? He's out in the house like a boy would be going, and he's told us already, she's so great, right? And then she's there. He's in shock. He does not expect to see her. She has no idea he's out there. she's saying things she would never say in front of the boy she likes, right? We've all been there. And then all of a sudden he goes, take me on thy word, I'll be new baptized. And she screams and drops this rose. And then he has something that is hers, right? That he can take up. He can take with him. He takes a token with him. You give him something that reads all the way to the back wall. People out there know what's going on. And that's what's really important in the storytelling, especially if people have a problem with any of the language. Now, the balcony scene's not a place you normally have a problem with the language, but Shakespeare's doesn't fall readily on everyone's ear in much the same way that opera doesn't, right? So we have that in common as art forms. Let's see what this says. Oh, look, walking and talking. So this is important. Reading Shakespeare is the bane of my and everyone else's existence, yes? Sometimes part of my job is to go talk to potential donors or people we want to participate with us. And I'm like, so hi, did you study Shakespeare in school? And they're like, uh-huh. And you go, oh, this is not going to go well. I go, well, did you like it? They're like, not really. You go, well, okay. I'll go, I'm going to get out of here in 10 minutes. But let me just tell you, if you come see the play that I've directed, you're going to love it, right? Because it is about how do you walk and talk this language. It is not meant to be read in a room quietly to yourself. Now, if you enjoy that, there's nothing wrong with you. It's good language and all that. It's a good enough story. But that is not the point. The minute you read it aloud or you get in a room where you hear some people reading it aloud, it becomes a whole other thing. So things move quickly, and it's a good story to tell. Let me just talk for a minute about who the people are. I already talked about the prince. A lot of times people don't know that they are related, and so I think they lose that really good part of the story, that his kinsmen are also killed. Capulets and the Montagues, Romeo and Juliet, the children of the feud, as I like to call them. Benvolio and Friar Lawrence and the nurse are the best friends these kids ever had. They try all the way through this play to help them. They want them to be together. They do everything they can within their power to try to help them and try to make things better. And unfortunately, it never works out. And then you have the household servants and factions of both the houses. So the text is not easy. Have you ever read Shakespeare text? Were you ever in a Shakespeare play? So it's not easy. Some bits of it are easier than others. My job is really important when it comes to making sense of it and helping the actors make sense of it, but also in how I prepare the script. When we did Hamlet, we did not do 4 hours. We're going to do I cut it down to 2.5 hours. I'm going to cut things from the text before we ever get there that make absolutely no sense anymore, especially if it's comedy that we're never going to get if we can't get it physically. In a drama, sometimes if it's like we've already heard that concept, we don't need it again. And just for clarity, sometimes, it's just the language is too convoluted and therefore our ears to get it. I don't think anyone can say it clearly enough in a way that you're going to get it as an audience. And that's no reflection on you. It's a reflection on all of us, because sometimes it's just hard. It's hard text. So they also have to be ready, actors do, to do this work, not only with the text, but also do they know how to fight when they come in the room? There's the people you're going to see fighting on stage at the opera. I'm assuming have had a sword in their hands before now, one hopes. You have to train for that. You can't just walk on a stage and go, well, let's see what happens. And we also don't have time to train people. We've got, we rehearse for 3 weeks, so there's no time to train anyone. It's like you have to know all the moves and how to do them before you get there, and then they're choreographed for you, right? So you have to learn the choreography and then you have to do it. We also do period, movement, and dance. People back in this time wore different clothes. Corsets make you stand differently. I've worn one, and let me tell you, have you ever worn one of those corsets, anyone? I mean, when they talk about women's weakness and all that back when they used to wear corsets, I'm like, because they couldn't breathe. I would have passed out too if you walked too fast. You're like, oh, keep breathing, because everything's getting, smushed, and then they'd faint on those fainting couches. It's like, they're not weak, they just can't breathe. Okay? You go put a corset on and then you run around and then you talk to me. But also boots and cod pieces and, all the stuff, all of it, right? I mean, these are their clothes, and sometimes, have you ever tried to wear a really long cape for a really long time with a train? It is not easy. It's like wearing a wedding dress all day, every day. And, it's just hard. It's a specific movement. And oftentimes we do period movement work with people who are trained to do it. Well, different time periods move different ways. Right? We greet each other with handshakes. Less now from COVID. I thought for a minute, maybe we will never shake hands again, right? Because of COVID. Nobody would do it. You're like, don't touch me. But back in the day, they used to do this male-to-male grippy thing, right? Says, I don't have any weapons. That's what this is, like checking you for weapons, right? Sometimes they moved in patterns like this. Because their clothes, they look pretty in their clothes when they did this, right? And they hold their hands a certain way. And you see those period pieces, women hold their hands a very particular way, right? And that's because what? We're covering the... You don't need to think about those areas, right? But there's, sometimes it's very direct. Sometimes the bows are, this. Sometimes they're this. And it depends on your relationship. So they have to know all that. And period movement and period dance go hand in hand. They don't dance the same way we do, right? So when we're doing period movement and dance, they have to learn both of those things and incorporate those in their character. And if you're the king, then I may have to go all the way to the ground, right? Or if you're an earl or an earl-s, what is the earl's lady? And if you're one of those, it might just require a little less, right? And it depends on who I am, what my relationship is to you. I always say if you're the king, you put your hand out, a cup appears, right? You don't go to the cup comes to you, right? It's very interesting to just have those spatial relationships, and we all recognize them even if we don't know it. Very interesting. Even in our modern society, when you walk in a room, you know if somebody really important is there. If Taylor Swift were in here right now, we would know it, because her energy would be there, right? Everybody's energy would be like whatever, right? Very different, very different. And then they have to, wear those period costumes. I always say to them too, these are your clothes. And sometimes they get real futzy or weird. And I'm like, figure it out. If you have to lift your skirt up, remember that great moment Judi Dench as Queen Elizabeth just lifts that skirt up to here and just goes across that mud because nobody was quick enough. It's like, those are her clothes. Do it. What would you do? Right? Let's see where we are next. I have no idea. Yes. So I just kind of gave us a little go through the play just to remind us of what it's like. This is the very beginning. The prince is mad. Everyone just got done fighting and they've been told to put their weapons down. This is the Capulet Ball. I love that he always says, welcome, gentlemen, welcome all. Oh, hi, ladies. I mean, it's all welcome, gentlemen. Gentlemen, yay, gentlemen came. It's like, look at all those pretty ladies that came too. This is a great moment. I'll tell you a hard part of this play for a director and the actors as well is the Capulet Ball. I'm not sure what it's like in the opera, but I'm intrigued to see. They have to have their own little intimate scene and talk a lot right in the middle of the ball. So you have to start the dancing and kind of create the world, and then at some point he has to steal her away from the dance. And you have to sneak down stage somehow and be really close where hopefully most people dancing will ignore them, right? But they can be over there as we're seeing Tybalt see what's happening. And there's these two scenes that have to happen. It's really hard to stage, and you keep going, that's fake. I hate fakiness. I hate it. But, sometimes you just got to eat it because that's all you can do. I don't have a secret room for them to go into. So you just create the reality and you say, you're coming down stage. You're going to stay up stage. Don't ever look at them. Don't look at Romeo and Juliet. See nothing. There's Tybalt being furious. He goes to get his sword. He's going to run Romeo through because Romeo took his mask off to see Juliet, right? And he goes, ah! And he goes to get his, oh, look how, don't drop your thing. He goes to get his sword. His uncle sees him and says, hey, where are you going? With a sword in my ball, right? that came out wrong, at the Capulet ball. He's like, where are you going with that sword, right? I don't need you to kill people here. And he gets put down, I think, I said it. He gets put down pretty strongly by his uncle. And the more he gets put down by his uncle, the more it feeds the next day. Because what's ahead of us is him being really mad at Romeo because he got the smackdown, right? So that's where we get to next. Now they're in love. They've been through the balcony scene. They've decided to be in love. The sweet friar has said, if you guys get married, this might work out. I'm going to be the hero. Yes? And so we have a secret little marriage that happens. And then Romeo shows up. And the guys are outside. It's hot. They've all been hungover from the night before. And Mercutio and Benvolio are hanging out. Suddenly, Tybalt and his guys appeared. He's like, hey, where's Romeo? And he's like, not here. Oh, and then guess who shows up? Romeo. And Romeo says, I don't want to fight with you because I can't tell you, but I secretly married your cousin. So now we're related and I'm not going to fight you. But I can't say it, so I'll just say no thank you. And he turns away and is called a coward and walks off. And his friend Mercutio goes, what is wrong with you? Hey, I'll fight you. And you have one of the greatest fights probably ever on stage because Mercutio is one of the most beloved characters. And unfortunately, Tybalt kills him. And then Tybalt flees. And then Romeo stands over his friend's body, cries, and then Tybalt appears to see what happened and if he is dead. And Romeo kills him. And that's when, of course, the play changes. We could end right there. Oh, I am fortune's fool. Yes, you are. And then he is banished. And Juliet doesn't know what to do. She's married. Can't get divorced. Can't tell anyone. Her parents want her to marry this other guy. She's already married. Not good. So she says, help me, friar, you did this. And he comes up with the plan so she won't stab herself. He comes up with to drink the potion, pretend that you're dead, and then Romeo and I'll come get you out of the tomb and it'll all be okay, right? Good plan. Who doesn't want to have to go be in a tomb? And Romeo is in Mantua, where he's been banished. And poor Friar John, who shows up for like 5 minutes in the play, is supposed to go and give him a letter that says, hey, Juliet's not really dead. She's in the tomb. Come on back under cover of darkness and we'll get her out of the tomb. You two can leave and that'll be that. And Friar John can't get there because of a plague. And that has never felt more immediate than it did the last time we directed this play. Suddenly, people are kept in. They're not allowed to go out of the house. Look at that. So it's a very real thing, right? So Romeo never got the notification. Balthazar shows up, his buddy, to say, because he thinks she's dead. And he's like, hi. He's like, what's going on? How's Juliet? Not so good. And then he has to tell him she's dead. And he's like, okay, well, I'm done. He goes to this weird dude that looks like Willy Wonka in our play, I've just realized. And yeah, he does, doesn't he? He goes to get a poison because he wants to kill himself, but he's going to take the poison and go all the way back and crack into the tomb and drink it. And then he finds her. First he finds Paris, who he has to kill to get to her, which is always one of the saddest things. Paris was there to cry over Juliet's tomb, and then he hears the noise and he hides, and then suddenly it's Romeo and he springs out to apprehend Romeo, and of course he's like, just go, man. I ain't leaving here alive, just go. And he's like, nope, I'm taking you in. And he's like, okay, I'm gonna have to kill you then, and he does. And then he goes to Juliet and he have that beautiful lamentation over the body and all of the things that happen. And then he drinks the poison. And then the friar appears. And first he sees Paris dead. Then he sees Juliet's not awake. And then he sees Romeo and he can't quite believe it. And then what does she do? Right? Happens. The moment happens. And she wakes up. And the friar says, come on, don't look over there, don't look over there, come on, come on, come on. And she sees Romeo and she won't leave. And they hear all this noise happening because everyone's been, the watch has been raised, right? The watch has been raised. Someone's breaking into tombs. And she has no choice because she tries for the poison. There's none left. And she's 13 and she's done. So she takes that dagger and she plunges it into her heart and she's gone. Very sad. And then we're left with that. Yeah, and everyone's in the tomb. So it's a very sad story, and it didn't have to happen. It's interesting in the play also that she says, I don't know if you know this about the play, it's always gotten to me. She says, she has a premonition about Romeo. She says, if he be married, my grave is like to be my wedding bed. It always guts me a little bit at the end of the play. She has a very brief journey of 5 days, and it's very different than, and it's a weird contrast with Shakespeare's comedic heroines. They go, you've got the ladies who are in A Midsummer's Night's Dream that run into the forest and have magical adventures and, silly moments of love, where they think their love is lost. And then at the end, they always get to come back together and they're married and everyone's happy. The ladies that go into the Forest of Arden, Rosalind and Celia, they escape confinement as well. They go to the forest, but they end up in love as well. So everything ends well. But this is very different. They have some kind of a limited amount of freedom in a way that Juliet never has. She's punished for her experimentation. It's very radical. It's secret, and it's as irreversible as a real death in that time. There was, once she was married, there was no way back. They went so far they just couldn't come back. The secret marriage cannot have a comedic outcome. So when they reunite, it is only to see each other, in this case, dead in the tomb, and they never get to speak again. But I believe Gounod lets them talk to each other, doesn't he? He's kinder, isn't he? Kind of just have that little moment. Yeah, it's pretty sad when they don't even get to speak to each other. When she says, your lips are warm after she kisses him, that always gets me too. Your lips are warm. I mean, right there. So in this play, the romantic individualism remains star-crossed. They are definitely star-crossed lovers. I love these lines. We do tell the story over and over again. It's been told in a million different ways, and it's going to be told again tomorrow in some other new film or TV, I wish everybody had listened to the friar, and I wish he'd listened to himself when he said, wisely and slow, they stumble that run fast. They did. They did. He also wisely said, these violent delights have violent ends. Nobody listened to that when he said it either, but they should have. Don't move too quickly. Don't be too impulsive. Don't be 13. Don't be 16. It's very interesting, those two ages, because my aunt and uncle met when they were 13 and 16, and they are 83 and 86 this year, and they've been together ever since. So some people make it. There's that. High drama, beautiful language, great sword fights, a fancy dress ball, romance, comedy, and the possibility of finding great love when you're a teenager. This is why we want to tell that story over and over again. It gives us all of that. It's epic, and it's big enough for our stage in the park, and it's big enough for an opera, so it's got to be big and sizable. That's what I want to talk about today. Questions that you have for me? Yeah.
Well, you directed after Juliet, didn't you?
I did.
Okay, and so here is what really got to me, because it happened, Rockhurst. Okay, so what there was is like a gang of people, and I think one guy, he liked a girl, God knows what. But anyway, they had a fight, and someone died from that. Teenagers, just like you said. Yeah. And one of the kids that they asked, he didn't even know what they were fighting about. He was friends with the guy that was in charge, but he had no idea what they were fighting about, and someone died from that.
Yep. It's very sad.
Very sad.
Yeah. She's referencing a play called After Juliet that was written by Sherman Macdonald, who is the mother of Keira Knightley, weirdly enough. I directed that play a few years ago. It says what happened after the play, right, for the people that were still alive. Rosalind actually shows up in that play. She's a main character in that play, so good for Rosalind. Yeah. I think the point is, though, yes, why are we fighting? I'm supporting you, so I'll fight for you anyway. It doesn't matter. Yeah. especially when you're a teenager and your brain isn't fully formed. Hopefully we have better, at least older people have hopefully somewhat better sense than that. We hope, right? No killings in the parking lot, everyone. No gunplay. Any other questions or thoughts that you want to share? Yeah.
You know, when you said the parking lot, they just had a case of these 3 cars went into this man's, driveway or whatever, and he was supposedly concerned about other stuff that had been happening, and he got a gun, and he shot them, and he killed this woman, and all these people had done were they went into the park because they were at the wrong house. They didn't know. They didn't even get out of their cars, and I just, it's unbelievable.
It is.
That's what happened at the Victory Parade.
It is what happened at the parade.
Exactly.
The mother of one of the shooters was saying, well, oh yeah, he was shooting in self-defense, not explaining why he brought a gun to a rally, but they had no sense of the fact they were shooting at innocent bystanders.
Yeah.
And when you say that he was shooting in self-defense, what it was a gang of kids or whatever, and he claimed that he was scared and they were going to do something to him. He was scared, that's why he took out the gun and immediately started shooting. These people weren't attacking him. They hadn't done anything to him yet. Maybe they were going to, but at that point, his first response was to take out his gun and start shooting. I just, again,
It's unfortunately our culture.
Yes.
Our gun culture is everything. Yes.
Has the Romeo and Juliet opera been around for many years?
I believe it has. Do you know the answer to that, Neil?
Yes, since the late 1700s.
Yeah.
Wow.
Not as long as Shakespeare, but a long time. I was not born back then either, so I didn't see the first production. 1590 was this first play, so 1700s. Yeah. That's a while ago. Yes.
So are you involved with this production?
No, they didn't ask me. I don't know why. Wouldn't that have been great? I imagine some really brilliant opera directors directing it. I know we share a fight director, though. The festival has 2 fight directors that work together to choreograph all of our fights, and I know that Martin English is working with the opera to choreograph those fights. So they will be good and safe, which is both things are really important when it comes to the fights. Yeah.
Martin English has been choreographing fights since the 80s.
Yes, he has. Long before me. I didn't know him then. Yes.
I've been to Shakespeare in the Park here and also to see Shakespeare plays at the theater in Wisconsin where they do.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering if there were any other, really good Shakespeare companies, here or in Britain that you might suggest.
Yes, you should go to the Royal Shakespeare Company. They know what they're doing over there. Yes. Stratford, also up in Canada, is brilliant. We have a lot of really good companies in the United States, I have to say. St. Louis Shakespeare's got a good company. They were founded and started much like our model, so they are sort of modeled on us. It's weird and good that we have 2 free Shakespeare festivals in the same state, because I don't think that exists anywhere else. I really don't. We're donation only, so we keep it free. Oregon Shakespeare Festival has been around for, 60 some years up in Ashland, Oregon. They have a year-round schedule going. Colorado Shakes, there's New Jersey Shakes, there's Texas, Dallas, right? I think. Orlando Shakes. There's a ton of Shakespeare festivals almost everywhere. There's another newish one in Great River Shakespeare Festival. It's up Winona, Minnesota. I just pulled that out of my brain like it was nothing. Yeah, there's just so many amazing places. We had a British director here years ago that was co-directing with me. We were doing 2 different shows. He was very charming and very handsome and talked Britishy. So when we'd go talk together, it was always like, oh, here comes her. And then there's, hello, it's me. I'm very handsome and British. Hello. And I'd be like, thanks, Ian. But he would always talk about how in America, we revere Shakespeare more than they do in England. That there were so many, there was a great culture of us having all these Shakespeare festivals and doing Shakespeare plays on an ongoing basis. And he goes, there's specific places that do it, but it's not done all over like it is in the United States. So, yeah.
Wasn't Kansas City inspired by the New York Shakespeare?
Yeah, very much so. Thank you. I forgot. That's kind of a good big one. Thanks, Michael. Yes, New York City has a great outdoor Shakespeare festival, the Delacorte. I think they're going to have to move out of that park for a year because they're doing renovations. But it was founded. Our founder, Marilyn Strauss, was from Kansas City and then had worked in New York and won a Tony and worked in New York. Knew Joe Papp, who founded the New York Festival, and the story is very dramatic the way Marilyn told it. When he was on his deathbed, gripping her hand, said, "Go home. Start a Shakespeare festival. Keep it free." And then he died. But, it's a good story. But I know he did tell her to do that. He thought it was a brilliant idea, of course, because he thought there should be Shakespeare festivals everywhere and that they should be free, And it is pretty great. I love working where I work because you get to say to people, hey, you can come. Because it's free, and you don't have to worry about trying to say to people that may or may not be able to afford a ticket price. You can go, come on. Bring your blanket. Come on. It's all right. Give it a try. I mean, it's a no-risk thing, right? So when people say they haven't come, I'm always like, but it's free. Just try it, So we're going to be doing Julius Caesar this coming summer. If you don't know that play, it's a play about a republic in chaos. Nothing like anything I've ever known. So hopefully the story will, it's a very popular play. It's a play a lot of people have been wanting to see. We haven't done it for 20 years. It's a great play. It's a great play of political rhetoric and assassination and war. But, I think hopefully it will make us think, if nothing else. When people will say, why did you do it that way? Or why did you pick that, time period? Or why did you, and I've had several people, because the New York Shakespeare Festival did put somebody in a Donald Trump wig and do that play a few years ago. And it was huge. I mean, it was national news. And they're like, well, you're going to do that? I go, no, because you don't know number one, you don't know my political, I don't know everybody's political beliefs. Do I want to have people refusing to come see a play because they don't want to watch that's not the point of Shakespeare in the Park. The point of Shakespeare in the Park is to be accessible to everyone. And that story's good enough on its own. We don't need to put anybody in that character that exists today, in my opinion, because half the people aren't going to want to come watch it. So they're already going to say, well, that's no good. Why would I watch that? As opposed to coming to see a play set in ancient Rome that shows us again and again that how many times do we relive the same things over and over? Nothing is new. What do we learn from this? How do we, so it's like this play. It's like this story. We keep doing it over and over, right? What do we learn from this story? We can also use, we can use it. It's also interesting when you encounter this story, any story, but these Shakespeare stories or opera that have been around since 1700. If you encounter them at different points in your own life, it's interesting how your perspective shifts, isn't it? Mine did. I directed this play 15 years ago. I was different then. The people that I identified most with were different then. So the parents don't seem quite so terrible anymore. Honestly, I mean, I wish they'd stop fighting, but they also are like, just, don't kill yourselves, So it's very interesting what great stories can do. No matter how they come to you, if they're sung to you, if they are spoken to you, if you are, engaged with them in a live way too, what they can actually things that go in, things that you hear, it's like, I've heard this before. Why does that suddenly resonate differently? Why does that mean something to me now? Why am I hearing that? Maybe, did I hear that before? Interesting. So you'll find that anything you see more than once, if it's good enough, if the writing's good enough, if the music's beautiful enough, you'll hear it differently. And you find your way in, right? And what's important to you. It's interesting how it changes with us. Anything else? Anyone? Thanks for being here. I'm glad you let me talk about this. Thank you. Thank you.